Why Nizar Qabbani? Why did we choose his statue? Nizar Qabbani defined poetry in his own words. Poetry is that high-energy language that cancels all past languages and reforms them anew. Poetry is the sparks of freedom and rains of sadness that accumulate under people's skin to explode later on as flowers, moons, stones, rubies, and fighters. Born in 1923, Nizar Qabbani wrote poetry for over 50 years of his life, tackling the most sensitive social and political questions of our modern times. He was greatly influenced by tragic events in his life, as well as those that afflicted the Arab world. He was by far the most daring Arab poet of the 20th century, shattering taboos and presenting his verses to readers in simple, accessible language. These revolutionary attributes earned him the criticism of many social, political, and literary traditionalists and conservatives. His poetry raised the consciousness of people, of the youth in particular, so much so that Arab rulers banished him from their lands, leading him to a life of exile in Europe for many years. It wasn't until later on in his life that he was allowed back in some Arab capitals, where he was welcomed by great crowds of people who gathered to attend his recitals. Nizar Qabbani poetry is generally divided by critics into three major categories. His early socially conscious poetry, particularly those works relating to women's issues, were significantly inspired by the suicide of his sister, who was forced to marry against her will. He wrote his resounding poem, Bread, Hashish, and the Moon, and Ayazun, the famous Ayazun song, or poem that became a song. The first line, does he think I'm a toy in his hands? Attacking male chauvinism and traditional patriarchal authority over women and advocating women's rights and liberation. His romantic poetry dominated his early work and was considered the most daring in modern Arabic poetry, celebrating female beauty, sensual love, and sentimental feelings with almost erotic images. Some of the following titles shed light on their contents: Book of Love, Savage Poems, Poems Against the Law, and The Lover's Dictionary. Sorry. His second major subject area was politics. He attacked the political ills of the Arab world. Here he was a true rebel. He attacked the backwardness of societies, their clinging to the past, and failure to advance. He was outraged by the chronic defeatism of the Arab regimes. He wrote against dictatorships, corruption, oppression, and the petty rivalry between Arab rulers. He advocated progressive, united, and modern pan-Arab policies. His book, Marginal Notes on the Book of Defeat, is a good example. His poetry bled with bitterness, sorrow, and outrage when his beloved wife, Balkis, was killed in a bombing incident in Beirut in 1982. Even though these turbulent times in the Arab world were major topics for many poets and writers, Nizar's words were the most piercing, heart-wrenching, and daring of all. These two topics, the feminism and the political side, these two topics were commonly intertwined in his poetry. For him, feminist liberation and political liberation were inseparable. His third subject was his love to Damascus, Sham, where he was born and where he spent his youth. He expressed this theme in his poetry throughout his career. In his own words, "A Damascene moon travels through my blood. We can see the romance and the commitment." We engraved this phrase on his face. He also said, "I can't be neutral about Damascus. We sense love for and infatuation with Damascus, his adoration of its jasmine." We brought a sample of the jasmine plant that we have in our house to see this Damascene jasmine. Unfortunately, it can't grow in the outdoor weather in Cleveland, so we keep it in the garage in the winter. He loved Damascene jasmine. Roses, Damascene roses. The red rose in the garden there is the Damascene rose. And bubbling water fountains. This is a replica of a famous palace in Damascus, Asr al-Azam. His adoration of its jasmine roses and bubbling water fountains is palpable. His yearning for its alleys, minarets, church bells, and old homes is tangible. His longing for his mother, who died in his early childhood, intensified his love for his home and homeland. In his poem, "Damascus, what are you doing to me?" I can't read it. Sorry. "I returned to Damascus riding on the backs of clouds, riding the two most beautiful horses in the world, the horse of passion and the horse of poetry." In his later years, he expanded these sentiments to include the other Arab cities. In many memorable verses, he was buried in Damascus as he vanished in 1998, as he wished. Above all, the style and language of Nizar poems are most distinctive. Poetry has been a major component of Arab culture throughout the centuries, empowered by a rich and vast language. Poems could go for tens and hundreds of rhyming verses, adhering to strict rules and meters. Nizar Qabbani pioneered a modern, simple, and elegant style. He used wonderful imagery in simple expressions that some critics called the Qabbani language. Many literary critics called his style the Qabbani language. That's how revolutionary it was. This powerful simplicity was a major factor that allowed his poetry to captivate the hearts and minds of millions of Arabic-speaking people. Finally, we are especially privileged that Nizar Qabbani visited Cleveland in 1994. We hosted him in our homes and spent 3 unforgettable days with him. He gave a fabulous poetry recital which was attended by hundreds of people. He was so taken by the warmth of his visit that he wrote a tribute, later published in Arabic newspapers, called Cleveland, City of the Heart. I'm going to read just a few lines from that article that he wrote. When he came, he met with a lot of members in the community. Many of them, as you know, were physicians, and many of those were cardiologists. So he referenced this in this statement. He said, "I spent 3 wonderful days with you in Cleveland, immersed with you day and night in poetry and medicine, to the point I thought you are the poets and I am the cardiologist." Our great friend here, Dr. Abu Khair Atasi, was a personal friend of Nizar. And you're going to hear from him in the evening, some of his reflections on Nizar and Nizar's visit. Thank you. "Each city takes a shape. Paris is beautiful woman, Athens is the mind, Damascus is the jasmine, Cairo is minaret, Beirut is freedom, and Cleveland takes the shape of a heart. Actually, there is a special relation between Cleveland, renowned for its cardiac care, and poetry, which God created to stimulate the human heart, to exercise love, revolution, and liberty. Somebody's heart is in trouble outside. He says, Cleveland and poetry are inseparable. Both of them treat lovers and passionate souls. Both of them energize human heart with blood and warmth that create thousands of rainbows. Many thanks to the capital of hearts, Cleveland, hoping that you take care of my heart, regulating its rhythm and taming its wide pulse. So I can tell you, I love you, I love you, I love you. For all the attributes of Nizar Qabbani, for his entire legendary legacy, we are very thankful, grateful, and proud. His memory will forever endure amongst us in Cleveland as one of the most notable Syrians of all times. Thank you.